The palace maid entered the side hall. Ying bowed and said, "Greetings, Lord Shu." Shu Qian smiled and returned the salute. "Sister Langer." Langer stood in the side hall and nodded slightly. "What does Lord Shu wish to ask?" "The Empress is still waiting for me to serve her," Shu Qian immediately said. "Sorry, I went to the Imperial Pharmacy to get some medicine to soothe the nerves and clear the mind," Shu Qian asked again. "Did you tear up the income and expenditure books of the Imperial Pharmacy?" He was just as straightforward with the other palace maids and eunuchs on the list. With the Qi watching technique, it's like having a foolproof lie detector, even better than surveillance. Langer simply and bluntly shook her head. "No." Using the Qi watching technique, Shu Qian sighed with disappointment in his heart. "I went to the Imperial Pharmacy to get some medicine for calming the nerves and refreshing the mind." Shu Qian asked again, "Did you tear up the income and expenditure records of the Imperial Pharmacy?" He was just as straightforward with the other palace maids and eunuchs on the list. With the Qi observing technique, it's like having a foolproof lie detector, even better than surveillance. Langer shook her head simply and bluntly. "No." Shu Qian, using the Qi observing technique, sighed in disappointment in his heart. "She is telling the truth. It seems my judgment was wrong. The person who tore up the ledger didn't enter the Imperial Pharmacy within the last 5 days. It was earlier than that. There are 2 possibilities. The person who tore up the ledger entered the Imperial Pharmacy more than 5 days ago, or there is a traitor within the Imperial Pharmacy. Later, we will question the palace maids and eunuchs working in the Imperial Pharmacy." Thinking of this, Shu Qian cupped his hands and said, "I've finished my questions. But this case is not over yet. We might visit again in the future." Hearing this, Langer showed obvious impatience in her eyes. Shu Qian quickly said, "I'll bring some small gifts for Sister Langer next time. The mung bean cake from Yue Tower in the capital is a signature snack." Langer shook her head. With detachment and slight resistance, she said calmly, "No need, I don't like eating mung bean cakes." Shu Qian was startled upon hearing this. The compliment he was about to blurt out abruptly halted, because he remembered that when he first entered the palace, the courtesan had clearly told him, this palace maid, who was deeply trusted by Consort Chen, loved mung bean cakes the most, but now she said otherwise, with a look of impatience on her face. Most importantly, his Qi observing technique showed that Langer's emotions were very stable. He didn't lie. He quickly thought of 2 possibilities. 1. Langer actually doesn't like mung bean cakes. The reason she pretends to like them is to win favor with Consort Chen. 2. She is lying. The divination technique failed to detect it. This means she has an artifact that blocks the divination technique. The first possibility can't be judged for now. The second possibility is what makes his scalp tingle. How could a maid from Jingshu Palace have an artifact that shields from divination? Unless she needed such an artifact to deceive everyone these past few days. Unless she knew she would be interrogated soon. What has she done these past few days? She went to the Imperial Pharmacy. Langer frowned, examining the emotionless Shu Qian. "Lord Shu?" Shu Qian immediately composed himself. Can't jump to conclusions easily. Maybe she just doesn't like mung bean cakes. She unintentionally spoke her mind. He forced himself to stay calm and said, "Though Miss Lang is someone close to Consort Chen, her temper is quite excessive. I have shed blood for the court, and performed meritorious deeds. Miss Lang's disrespectful attitude suggests she has a grudge against me." Langer said indifferently, "Minister Shu, you are overthinking. I meant no disrespect, nor do I have any complaints about you, sir," she said as she walked out. "I need to hurry back to serve the noble consort." After saying this, she stepped over the threshold and left. Shu Qian watched the palace maid's departing figure. His heart sank to the bottom. Just now, the feedback from the Qi watching technique showed that Langer still hadn't lied. Therefore, he could almost confirm that this palace maid had something to block the Qi looking technique. Thinking of this, a terrifying truth was revealed. The mastermind was her, Consort Chen. Shu Qian's scalp tingled. He hurriedly gave an order to a young eunuch, and walked out in a rush. Although he appeared calm on the surface, if you looked closely at Shu Qian's steps, it was obvious that he was flustered. Shu Qian cursed inwardly. This place was like a haunted house at midnight. Countless evil spirits seemed to be entertaining guests, and he was the passerby who accidentally stumbled upon their secret. He just wanted to pretend he knew nothing, then quickly leave before the spirits reacted. Fortunately, the way was clear. He arrived at the palace gates without incident. But then his steps suddenly froze. If noble consort Chen is the mastermind, then everything the empress has suffered is the price noble consort Chen is about to pay. Stripped of her title and confined to the cold palace. What about Linan? At this thought, he suddenly recalled something. He looked at the eunuch guarding the door and asked, "By the way, you took my silver to get inside. Did you help deliver my message?" Although the old eunuch was a little confused, he still nodded. "I have already informed her, but Sister Langer said she wouldn't see you. I was greedy and didn't want to return the silver note, but I couldn't explain it to you, sir." So, Shu Qian nodded. He was more convinced that Langer had a magical artifact, so she was prepared. When he thought of this, Shu Qian was about to leave. Suddenly, Langer's shout came from behind. "Lord Shu, wait." Shu Qian's back muscles quietly tensed up. His heartbeat suddenly accelerated. The pretty palace maid smiled brightly. "Her Highness wants to thank Lord Shu for solving the case of Consort Fu." This cleared the Crown Prince's name. "She invites you to come over and thank you in person." Shu Qian felt a bit of a headache. "I have other important matters to attend to, and cannot stay. The case of Consort Fu is my responsibility." "No need to thank me, Your Highness." Langer covers her mouth and chuckles. "Minister Shu, you are too polite," Her Highness said. "If you don't go see her, you won't be allowed to leave Jingshu Palace." Shu Qi's heart suddenly sank. "Whoa, horse. I haven't told anyone about my discovery just now. Even Langer hasn't noticed anything. There's no way Consort Chen knows I've seen through her scheme. She probably just wants to thank me. Putting on a show. But even so, this is the palace. There are imperial guards outside, and Linan inside. Consort Chen wouldn't dare do anything to me here. Besides, my blade skills are not to be trifled with." In the end, Shu Qian reluctantly nodded, but he didn't forget his other trump card, the little eunuch sent by Emperor Yuanjing to supervise. Though he might not play a crucial role in saving his life, he should be enough to deter. The two followed behind Langer, dressed in colorful palace attire, through the front courtyard corridor into the backyard. At this moment, the young eunuch coughed forcefully, to remind Shu Qian not to follow any further, and to wait here for a message. Langer kept walking, and entered the inner room alone. "Your Grace, Lord Shu is here," Consort Chen responded with a hum. "I have some words to say to Lord Shu. You all may leave, go to the outer courtyard." Then saw Linan walking out angrily, because everyone included her, but she didn't dare to defy her mother consort. She could only vent her anger on Shu Qian as she passed by him, but Shu Qian thought she looked very cute like this. It's just a pity that this wasn't the time for admiration and flirting. The young eunuch who came in was in a dilemma, not knowing what to do. Then Langer said, "The Empress said everyone else should leave. Didn't you hear?" Suddenly, Shu Qian shouted, "The Emperor sent you to supervise me. You should act like an imperial envoy. Stand up straight." He deliberately spoke loudly. "I'm ultimately an outsider official. It's inappropriate to meet the noble consort privately. This little eunuch is here to supervise me. It was by His Majesty's decree." The room fell silent for a few seconds. Then Consort Chen's voice came through. "Wait outside, then." Shu Qian then waved at the young eunuch, indicating for him to stand further away. "Just stay within my sight." He speculated about what would happen next. If it was just to thank me, there's no need to dismiss everyone. In other words, what Consort Chen says to me cannot be heard by outsiders. That's also why he had the little eunuch stand further away. It's a compromise for Consort Chen, and also an extra layer of protection for himself. He cannot hear the conversation between the consort and me, but he can clearly see everything happening inside the room. This prevents Consort Chen from pretending to be the victim, while actually accusing me of bullying her. Although this method is rather crude, it's necessary. End of thought. Shu Qian entered the room, and saw Consort Chen sitting elegantly, in luxurious palace attire. This was Shu Qian's second time seeing this beautiful woman. The last time was at the ancestral worship ceremony last year. Consort Chen and Linan have the same face shape, a standard oval face with delicate features. At this moment, Consort Chen's clear voice rang out. This morning, His Majesty proposed to depose the Empress in the court. Minister Shu must have heard about it. Shu Qian nodded succinctly. I am aware, concubine Chen responded with an O. Then why has Minister Shu come to my Jingshu palace? For what reason? Shu Qian replied. There are still some doubts about this case, the beautiful woman said with a faint smile. What doubts? Shu Qian sneered. This humble servant is ignorant. I have no clues. The room fell silent briefly. Consort Chen stared at Shu Qian for a long time. The smile on her face gradually faded. The next moment, she slammed her teacup down heavily. Her voice was like frost. You're lying. Shu Qian feigned confusion to probe. What do you mean by that, Your Highness? You can use qi sensing to see others. Consort Chen sighed unhurriedly. I invited you here just to test you, but your lie just now leaves me no room for luck. Lord Shu, your mind is sharp. No matter how intricate the case, it's just a trifle to you. Various thoughts flashed through Shu Qian's mind. Is Consort Chen a sorcerer? This is impossible. Why would she confess to me? Isn't she afraid I'll tell Emperor Yuanjing? What's her purpose in inviting me over? Thinking of this, he sighed. Your Majesty, why? I can pretend I don't know anything. After speaking, he added in his mind, and then go find Duke Wei and He Jing to deal with you. At this point, they were quite frank with each other. Consort Chen was as calm as if chatting casually. When did you find out? Just now? Shu Qian nodded candidly. Yes, I noticed Langer was disguised. Consort Chen smiled. But you had your suspicions before, right? Tell me. Shu Qian pondered and said, I have many doubts after reviewing the case of concubine Fu. How could her ladyship casually place the 100 pieces sent by the Empress on the table? After all, this is the harem, using tonic wine to get the crown prince slightly drunk. Aren't you afraid he might do something wrong? This doesn't match your cautious style. Although the Empress could bribe Huang Sharo to set a trap for the crown prince, how could she ensure that the crown prince would definitely go to Qingfeng Hall? And you are the birth mother of the crown prince. No one knows a child better than their mother. You knew he had feelings for Consort Fu, so you sent Huang Sharo to lie in wait. This explanation makes perfect sense. After that, from the discovery of Huang Sharo's body, to the clues I found all pointing to the Empress, the manipulative traces are too obvious. But if Huang Sharo just disappeared, it wouldn't achieve your goal of framing the Empress. Of course, at that time, I hadn't realized it yet. I still thought the Empress was the most suspicious. What I couldn't understand was why you sent someone to tear up the Imperial Pharmacy's ledgers. That should have been the most favorable evidence against the Empress. Not only was it unnecessary, but it also exposed yourself. Consort Chen shook her head. It wasn't unnecessary. That was evidence I deliberately left behind. If the investigator in charge wasn't you, it would have been the most useful evidence against the Empress. But your resurrection was completely unexpected, with Huang Sharo's body and the Imperial Pharmacy's ledger discovered simultaneously. The guiding traces were too obvious. I was afraid you'd notice something, report it directly. So I sent someone to tear up the ledger. That's why you were suspicious at the time. But no one insisted that the Empress was wronged by Yuan Ju. If His Majesty had known these things in advance, yesterday's crying plea from me would have been much less effective. Then I would understand the progress of the case from Linan. While applying pressure on His Majesty, I would send someone to assassinate you. As long as you're dead, and the Empress confesses, everything will be seamless. Shu Qian slowly nodded. This morning he still thought the Empress was the prime suspect in his assassination. He was determined to divorce He Jing. It turns out the person who wanted me dead was Consort Chen. Alright, no need to say anything more. I want to divorce Linan. Shu Qian looked at Consort Chen. I have 2 more questions. May I ask if your grace can answer them? Consort Chen replied calmly. Let's hear it, Shu Qian said. The crown prince is already the crown prince. Why does the Empress still act this way? Consort Chen laughed. Her laugh was complex. It was as if she was mocking Shu Qian. The crown prince is still the crown prince. As long as he hasn't ascended the throne, there's a chance he could be replaced. The Empress has always been the Empress. The 4th prince will always be the legitimate son. What if I told you that His Majesty originally designated the 4th prince? If His Majesty hadn't known back then that the Empress didn't love him, the 4th prince would already be the crown prince by now, Shu Qian asked in confusion. But even so, The position of crown prince hasn't changed for many years. Isn't your highness worrying too much? Concubine Chen let out another cold laugh. What do you know about court affairs? With Wei Yuan here, the fourth prince will always have a better chance than my son. Wei Yuan always aims to dominate the court and clear out obstacles. He wants to realize his ambitions, so he will definitely push the fourth prince to the throne. I, as a woman, can't compete with Wei Yuan. I can only make efforts through the Empress. The Empress is the head of the harem and the model for all women, the highest honor for a woman, and coveted the position of Empress. Regarding Wei Yuan's ambitions, Xu Qian had some understanding. He knew Consort Chen was telling the truth. He continued to ask, one last question. Who is the person behind you? Consort Chen shook her head and laughed. I'm growing more and more fond of you. It seems Linan has accidentally dug up a treasure. How are you so sure that there's someone backing me? Xu Qian thought. If the Empress had known about the prince's actions all along, why did she tolerate it for so long, and only act now? If the Empress only recently found out about the prince and Huang Sharo, then who told her? It certainly wasn't Huang Sharo. She could endure for so many years. There's no reason she would suddenly change and inform you. There must be someone acting as a go-between. Moreover, Your Majesty knows I lied. The astrology techniques of the Astronomical Bureau are not something ordinary people can perform. I just guessed another possibility. Your target is the Empress, and the person or force behind you is targeting Duke Wei. Concubine Chen's smile disappeared. Master Xu thinks, how is Linan? Xu Qian felt a stir in his heart. Of course, it's very nice. Noble Consort Chen gently guided. The Crown Prince told me that Linan is at the age to be married. I silently kept it in mind. Then I noticed that ever since she met you, whenever she came to Jingshu Palace, the person she mentioned the most was you. I, too, have been through the age of young love. I heard Lord Xu will soon be ennobled. Though a viscount is not high, it does mean you enter the noble class. I can promise you, within 3 years, your rank will rise. Then I'll marry Linan to you. Xu Qian hesitated. Such blatant wooing. This must be why Consort Chen was so frank with me. Seeing Xu Qian show interest, Consort Chen presses the advantage. Even if you know the secret, it's impossible to accuse me. Langer has been unwell recently. Sudden illness. The imperial physician couldn't save her. What do you think of this outcome, Lord Xu? Xu Qian is speechless. How could a pure and lovely child like Linan have a mother like you? You think you can fool me with empty promises? He pondered for a moment. 3 years is too long. Who knows if the consort is just tricking me? Consort Chen raised her eyebrows. The fastest would be 2 years. Bestowing a title is no small matter. You should be aware of that. Xu Qian waved his hand. That's not what I meant. We can get married in 3 years, but can we consummate the marriage before that? Xu Qian's rude request had just slipped out. Ice slowly crept up Consort Chen's face. Are you demanding me? Xu Qian shrugged and laughed. You see, no matter how good the promises sound, as soon as real commitment is needed, they turn hostile. Consort Chen picked up her teacup and took a sip. When putting down the teacup, her face had already returned to normal. My biggest flaw is Langer. As long as she is gone, there will be no evidence, and the towering Fengqi Palace will soon collapse. As the saying goes, a wise bird chooses the right tree to perch on. Lord Xu is a smart man. You know what to choose. Xu Qian nodded in agreement. The Crown Prince is still the Crown Prince, and the Empress is about to be replaced. The Empress also promised to marry Linan to me, so I choose Duke Wei. Consort Chen's face froze. She slightly tightened her grip on the teacup, barely resisting the urge to splash the hot tea on his face, or throw the cup. So, Minister Xu plans to take Langer away from Jingshu Palace. She wants to put me to death. As soon as she finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room dropped to freezing point. An invisible killing intent enveloped Xu Qian. Xu Zi, who was at the refining god stage, didn't detect the enemy's move, but the instinct of a 7th-rank martial artist sent him a signal. Danger? If he insisted on taking Langer away, it would mean perishing together with concubine Chen. In that case, she would definitely be driven to desperate measures. No longer caring that this is the harem to strike at me, my life cannot be guaranteed. Even though there is monk Shen Shu, But Shen Shu is my last card. Shu Qian sneered, straightened his back, with disdain in his eyes. When I, Shu Qian, faced tens of thousands of rebels, fought alone and killed thousands, died without falling, your highness thinks, am I supposed to fear mere threats? I do not fear death. How can you threaten me with death? Consort Chen's eyes showed obvious surprise. Well said, Lord Shu is indeed a hero, to fall into your hands. As she said this, Consort Chen tightly gripped the teacup and raised it high, as if to smash it as a signal. Suddenly, Shu Qian shouted loudly, wait, I am sincerely devoted to Linan, and don't want to see her sad. I can pretend that nothing happened. Shu Qian thought to himself, even if I want to expose the consort, I must first be able to leave Jingshu Palace. Consort Chen stared at him for a moment, and finally put down her teacup. Nodding in satisfaction, he said, you're not lying. It seems you truly care for Linan. In that case, why is Lord Shu unwilling to join us? Shu Qian secretly ranted in his heart. Do you think I'm an idiot? Joining you means certain death. In the capital, the only person I can rely on is Wei Papa. Hiking is only half reliable. As for Linan, she's a powerless princess who can't protect me at all. Thinking of this, he cupped his hands and said, Your Grace, supporting scholars isn't just empty promises. It requires real actions. I am loyal to Duke Wei because he treats me sincerely, and I trust him. After saying this, Shu Qian glanced at the eunuch outside the courtyard, then continued to say, I am helpless against the Empress, but I figured the Empress can't do anything to me either. Once there's no thought of mutual destruction, concubine Chen can't trouble me anymore. Although the little eunuch is just a lackey, he is now Emperor Yuanjing's eyes. He can be seen as surveillance. Everything that happens here will be conveyed to Yuanjing without a word missing, unless Consort Chen directly kills me. Otherwise, any schemes or false accusations are useless. The eunuch can testify for me. This is why Shu Qian insisted on keeping the eunuch. Consort Chen gave him a deep look. I am tired. You may leave. The gates of Jingshu Palace are always open for you. Shu Qian bowed. I take my leave. The little eunuch in the courtyard saw him come out. He immediately stepped forward and asked, Lord Shu, what did the consort say to you? Shu Qian replied irritably, Don't ask. Asking will cost you your head. The eunuch's face changed slightly. He walked to the outer courtyard. I saw Linan. Her round face beamed with a smile. You wretched servant, come here. That shout of wretched servant lacked any vigor. It sounded more like a pout. So coquettish. Shu Qian took a deep breath, suppressing his surging emotions. He smiled nonchalantly. Your Highness, I came out. Linan immediately asked, What did my mother say to you? Shu Qian cheerfully said. Her Highness said, Your Highness is nearly of age to marry. She asked if I had any suitable candidates, to recommend a few young talents, so she can find a future husband for your Highness. Linan was stunned for a moment. A blush quietly crept up her cheeks. Your mother would say this to you. Shu Qian was speechless upon hearing this, thinking, why aren't you falling for it? Since when did you become so clever? I was about to recommend myself next. He could only say helplessly, I was just joking. Biao Bao's eyebrows shot up. You dog slave, how dare you flirt with me? Shu Qian shamelessly said, I'm still a child. I don't understand what flirting is. Biao Bao blushed with embarrassment. She pounded Shu Qian's back with her little fists, but only sighed inwardly. Consort Chen could be considered a qualified consort, but whether such a silly girl like Linan, growing up in the palace is a blessing or a curse remains unknown. After playing around with Linan, Shu Qian also prepared to leave the palace. Little eunuch, I finished handling the palace affairs. When you report to His Majesty later, there are some things you can say and some you cannot. I'll give you a few pointers here. The little eunuch, hearing this, immediately assumed a serious posture. Please speak, Lord Shu. Shu Qian nodded in satisfaction. You need to tell the emperor everything about Jingshu Palace. You should say this. After questioning the maid Langer from Jingshu Palace, Lord Shu looked extremely displeased, and seemed unwilling to stay any longer. He didn't even drink tea. But before Lord Shu could leave Jingshu Palace, he was suddenly detained by the noble consort, and invited to the backyard. The noble consort dismissed everyone, and spoke privately with Master Shu for quite a while in the room. I was left in the courtyard and not allowed to enter. Although I could see the two of them in the room, I couldn't hear what they were saying. When the conversation ended, Master Shu left the palace with a heavy heart. After Shu Qian finished speaking, he took out a 5-tael silver note from his pocket, along with another 5 taels obtained from the eunuch guarding Jingshu Palace, a total of 10 taels, handed to the eunuch without a trace of hesitation. All the while saying, I can't accept, take the money. He carefully recalled Shu Qian's words, feeling there was no major issue. He agreed immediately. Shu Qian left the palace at once, rode back to the Night Watcher headquarters, on the swift horse borrowed from hiking. After being announced by the guard, he entered the Hui Tower, and went to the tea room on the 7th floor for guests. Wei Yuan was sitting in a large chair, with his hair down. A black-clad clerk was holding a comb, and combing his hair. Wei Yuan gently said, "Come over, and comb my hair." The black-clad clerk tactfully handed the comb to Shu Qian, and turned to leave the tea room. Shu Qian held the comb and started combing his father's hair, smoothly combing from top to bottom without any knots. He thought to himself, it's quite silky. At this moment, he joked, why is Lord Wei combing his hair at this time? Wei Yuan's voice was gentle. In Buddhism, hair symbolizes worries, so combing it smooths away troubles. Let bygones be bygones. Shu Qian was somewhat puzzled by this. What do you mean? Father Wei of Heaven is a bit strange. What do you mean by let bygones be bygones?